Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to the UK Festival podcast. Today I'm talking with Kev Davis, one of the key organisers behind Fueled by Cider and the frontman of the fantastic festival band, the Skimmity Hitchers. Now, Kev, I've got a few questions for you. First of all, can you tell me what the core mission of Fueled by Cider is?
I think our mission is quite simple, really. We're about bringing people together through live music, cider, and festival culture. Really, at the bottom of what we do, we're about bringing people together in a kind of genuine way and keeping them together. So we build a community, really.
Awesome. And could you run us through the events you organise?
Sure, yeah. So we've got three across the year, three main events. We have Outsider in August. That was the first one we ever did. So Outsider Festivals down in Somerset. It's just outside Bristol, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a lovely location in the Mendip Hills. And that's on a working farm, Fernhill Farm, which is a pretty magical place.
What do they produce on the farm?
Well, they're really interesting. Said their sheep is a lot of what they do. So they rear a lot of sheep. They also work wool and fibers on the farm. They're a regenerative farm, so everything they do is kind of traditional methods or more sort of alternative methods. So they're organic. They use an amazing, I can't think what they call it, but their water collection system. They're off the mains water, and they kind of have their own working water system. They use solar. Um, I'm not describing it very well, but it's a really alternative place.
No, but it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, people come to that place to learn. They do workshops, so they come to learn about sustainable agriculture. But it is a working farm. It's not like a demo farm. They are proper generations of farmers that have just seen a better way to farm. But they also love a party. So they have festivals down on the farm as well. It's a really great combination.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing it. What about the other two events?
So then Cursus Festival, which is coming up quite soon, is in Dorset, similar size. So we're talking like 500 ticket festivals, and that's down in Dorset on the Maybank holiday weekend. And then we have Incider Festival, which is in February.
Yeah, that's a bit exciting, isn't it?
That is actually really exciting. Yeah, it's Inside is totally different. People probably guessed why it's called Insider, or they're wondering how we put a festival on in February. But we basically take the summer festival experience indoors in February. We have a holiday park down in Somerset near Western Supermare on the seaside, and we put a summer festival indoors, and people have accommodation and showers and hot food, and it's kind of the little luxuries you don't get with a summer festival. But it's a really lovely way to break up the winter and kind of bridge the gap between the festival seasons. And yeah, it's just got a really special feel to it.
Do you find you get a different crowd at Incider because you get people who don't want to go out into the field and camp?
There's probably a few, but generally, most of the people that come are people that come to the summer ones that want to meet up with all their mates and are desperate for a festival at that time of year. So it's generally a really similar crowd. There's an extra thing to it which is nice, is it's really accessible because it's indoors and the actual holiday park has been set up for accessibility. So people that maybe have got accessibility needs, disabilities, find that one a lot easier because the layout, it's easy to get around. You've got a chalet to go back to. It's warm, it's catered. So I think some people do come and get a festival experience that maybe they'd struggle to get in the summer.
That sounds brilliant. So, what are the core differences between Outsider and Cursus, or are they just similar festival, different place?
They're similar. Outsider is an 18 plus. That's its key difference. So we don't have under 18s at that festival. That was just how we started it. We decided to do that. Um, it's on a working farm. There was kind of more risk associated with having kids running about on that site. Um, so we started as an 18 plus, and we've carried on with that. And also Outsiders kind of it's got more bands on it. It's more a bit more music focused. Um, and then
Hmm.
Cursus Festival is like the family friendly version of Outsider. So we get lots of families come in. There's a kids area. It's kind of laid out more accessible for kids. It's more sort of enclosed and less likely to lose anyone. So really, that's the difference. There's
Yeah.
a family-friendly version of Outsider.
Do you find that the people are a bit more sensible at Cursus?
Yeah, I guess the vibe is probably a bit more relaxed at that one. Having kids there does change it. It makes an
Mm.
amazing thing because the kids area is right next to where everything else is, right in amongst it. So the kids are about, there's not lots of boundaries and stuff. And I think that just levels people a little bit more having lots of young people about. Also, some of the adults that come to Outsider and let themselves go a bit more actually bring their kids to Cursus. So they have to be a little bit more on it. But I wouldn't want people to think that Cursus Festival is tame
No.
and just you just come down and it's like a little old folk festival. Some people are down there to party and they're having it, and you can do the both at Cursus, definitely.
Well, with your lineup this year, you're very much going for a party. Like Millie Manders and the Shut Up, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, and there we go. That sort of points out that you can do what you can have either experience at Cursus, like you can at any festival, really. You can choose what you do there.
Mm.
But just because we've got a family area and we've got kids there doesn't mean you kind of compromise your music. And also, I think we should be exposing young people to all sorts of music, and there's nothing more exciting than seeing kids come into the tent when a band's on and getting down near the front and watching a wild punk band or something. And because that's where you discover music, isn't it? And
Mm.
our crowd is a really, really nice crowd. So it's a really safe place for young people to come in and watch these bands because they'll be looked after. But I never went to a festival at that age. It must be incredible to stand there and watch this powerful band going wild on the stage. What an introduction to music.
Yeah, my first time seeing like a rock band, I was probably like 14. So, yeah, doing it at like 6 or 7, it does sound amazing.
Yeah,
Though also maybe a bit overwhelming.
maybe. Yeah, and again, I think that's another good thing about small festival is that if you are a bit overwhelmed by it, you can pretty quickly get out of that space and go to a nice little quiet space. Go back to the kids tent, whatever. Whereas um, taking a kid to a massive festival when they're young must be there's quite a lot of sort of opportunities for getting stressed out and not enjoying yourself, I would
Yeah.
have thought.
So, besides fronting the house band, the Skimmity Hitchers, and chatting with me today, what exactly is your role with Fueled by Cider, Kev?
It seems to actually increase every year rather than decrease, which is, I think, how it's supposed to work. Um, so I book all of the music and I program the lineup, DJs at Cursus as well. I do all of the social media, I do the promotion, so print promo, interviews like this. I organize our crew, which is really important. So I put the crew together, although I don't manage them on the weekend. I kind of get them in
Hmm.
place. So, that's stewards, our video people, our sound people, the caterers that come. Um, I'm the main liaison with the venue, I guess, these days. So it's quite a lot of stuff that I do. And then at the festival, I'm there from day one of the build. And quite often I'm the last person stood in a field on my own when everyone's gone home. Um, and I'm pretty busy on the weekend itself. But I'm not meaning to big
Well,
myself up. That is just genuinely what I do, just to put it into context of what running a festival was like.
well, no, you are busy on the weekend because whenever anyone drops out, you play a set.
That's true. We did do that at Cursus last year, didn't we?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you're always on hand to solve a problem, and I guess that's taking it to its extreme, isn't it? Is actually getting on the stage and replacing another band.
I enjoyed a second round of the Skimmity Hitchers. Um, anyway, so who are your other core key people involved in putting the festival on?
So we've got a really small crew, and I I can imagine that if other festivals saw how many people we ran our event with, in terms of the very core crew, I think they'd be really surprised. So there's me and Mike who kind of the pair people. Mike is fueled by cider. He's like the mysterious guy that once you've been to a couple of events, you know who he is. It's kind of his baby. He
Hmm.
deals with like, ticketing and infrastructure and all the kind of the big things. I do the stuff that I've described there, so I'm involved in most other stuff. But then we've got a few core people that are always there to make the festival happen. So we've got Jane and Keith, who have been there since day one. We're into their 10th Outsider this year, and we still have these same people that do the job. So Jane looks after our stewards and the box office, and she's got loads of festival experience. Keith deals with the band, sort of stage managing, artist liaison. Then we've got our sound crew who are amazing. They don't just come in and we don't see them. They are part of our main team. They're really, really intrinsic to it. We have a videographer, photographer, and unless I'm forgetting anyone, which I probably really am, that's our main kind of organizing crew, if you see what I mean.
So there's less than a dozen of you.
And then obviously we've got our amazing team of volunteers and stewards and people that come in, like they make it happen. The core crew is about 10 people or less a lot of the time.
Wow, that's amazing that you can do so much. And it's very cool that you've got the sound like so in-house, because when I was at Cursus, one thing I noticed was the sound was pretty on point for the vast majority of the acts. And for the headline, it absolutely smashed it out of the park.
That's really nice to hear that, Tim, because it's so important.
Mm,
Sound is so important. And you've probably been to enough gigs where the sound isn't great, or sometimes it can be awful. And at a festival, people are coming for a weekend of great experience. They've bought a ticket. The sound has to be good. And we actually get a lot of feedback about our sound crew, about the quality of the sound from the bands as well. The bands just one after another coming off saying, that's the best sound we've had for years. So we're very, very lucky. And they're great people to work with. They blow away the preconceptions of sound engineers, like sometimes people they're fun, they're friendly, they'll do anything for anyone. And it kind of sums up what we're trying to do with the events. Every part of that festival should be like that.
mm. Yeah, it's really quite amazing what you've got going on. So cider is obviously a big passion for all of you guys. Your company is called Fueled by Cider. Your festivals are named Incider and Outsider. When did you first develop a love for cider? And was it the commercial varieties, or were you into the good stuff from the day one?
Well, like a lot of people, I guess, my first introduction into drinking was cider, but not the good stuff. I grew up in Dorset, but I grew up in a big town, so by that point, we didn't really have access to good cider, so I didn't really know about it. But then when I was older and to go to festivals, you sort of discovered it and thought, oh, this is great. But then you go back to real life and didn't have it. So it wasn't until I moved up to Bristol 20 years ago where I kind of got my full West Country consciousness, really.
Mm,
Cider was available. Also, the real cider, it's part of the culture here, it's part of the heritage. It's really important.
mm,
There's a sort of cider punk scene in Bristol, there's cider pubs still. And yeah, once I kind of got that connection, then it was linked with the music. I went discovered this band, the Surfing Turnips, in Bristol when I first moved here, and they just changed everything for me. This kind of mix of actual cider culture and punk music. It just was amazing. And then that led to forming the Skimmity Hitchers, and we're a cider band. And so the more we did that, the more we got kind of invited in by the cider making community and the actual real cider
mm.
community. So the more we got involved in that, the more we knew about cider, and the more we saw, how important it is.
So is there a long tradition of this sort of cider and music event in the West Country?
I think cider and music go together, definitely. And, you have to mention the Wurzels at this point. They're still going after like nearly 60
Yeah.
years, and they're still going, and they kind of sort of put the thing together years ago. But so there's most festivals, don't they, have a bit of a cider feel to them. You can always get cider at festivals.
If I couldn't, I'd be deeply disappointed.
You would, wouldn't you? But when it comes to cider festivals, if you said, oh, I'm going to a cider festival, I think you'd probably expect to go to something like a beer festival where you go and the main emphasis is on trying lots of ciders and drinking them and maybe sitting around a big table, and there might be a bit of music on in the background, but it's not intrinsic to the cider drinking, a bit like a beer festival.
Hmm.
And even or a music festival has amazing music and people go for the music, and there happens to be some cider on sale, which is great. And what we've tried to do is bring the two things more closely together and kind of give them a bit more of an equal pairing, because they go really, really well together, and they're very similar. The cider scene, the real cider scene, and the kind of grassroots music scene have got loads and loads of links. So what we wanted to do is bring that a bit more closely together. But I would say that to see our festivals as cider festivals would probably be a little bit inaccurate. They are.
You advertise them as cider festivals, technically.
Yeah, we advertise them as cider and music festivals, but I think I guess the point I'd make is that people come to our festivals to watch bands, and you could spend the whole weekend and not touch a drop of cider, and you wouldn't mind because you might drink beer or you might not drink alcohol at all. It wouldn't matter. You come into a festival and you'd love it, and the music is the thing. There's not many people that come to our festivals just to drink cider, and they're not interested in the bands. And I think that's so. It is definitely tipped more towards the music festival, but cider is a massive part of it, and it kind of underpins it all, if that makes sense.
Have you ever had any real like proper cider fest, like cider nerds who've come down just for the cider and are basically ignoring the punk?
I can honestly say I can't recall ever meeting anyone like that who's either told me that they're doing that or that has said, well, this isn't what I was expecting. Which is after 10 years, you could imagine you might have found that someone came down expecting a sort of camera kind of event and they've actually turned up at an alternative music festival. So it hasn't happened, but that's not to say it doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I figure someone could take one look at one of your lineups and be like, yeah, that's a punk festival.
Yeah, I hope so.
So what inspired you guys to believe you could run your own event?
For me personally, well, it was meeting Mike. Mike, who I was talking about earlier, who kind of is fueled by cider. We had a chance meeting with him years ago. My band was supporting the Wurzels, and he was in the audience. We got chatting, and he did a music video for us. And then it just grew, and we came up, like a lot of people, you come up with a mad idea eventually of putting on a festival. But in terms of believing you can do it, I'd give a big shout out to the Eastern Cowboys and Cowgirls, which is a sports club, primarily football, in Bristol. And I moved up to Bristol largely because I wanted to join this club. They're like an alternative sports and social club, quite political, do interesting stuff.
Sounds very cool.
And when I got involved with them, I went from being someone who went to other people's events to someone that put stuff on. And we basically put on tournaments, like sports tournaments. People come from all over Europe, all over the world to play in these things, and it's very alternative, kind of DIY. A lot of people in
So
the
what
club.
sort of sports?
It's mainly football, but the club over the
Mhm.
years has grown, so it's got netball and cricket, basketball. But a lot of the international tournaments are based around football. And the people, the sort of early people in the cowfolk, and a lot of them now like came through the punk scene and the rave scene, and so basically brought that culture of DIY organizing with them. And so the club kind of runs on those largely on those principles. So when I got involved, I'd put on the odd benefit gig, but I'd never really done anything major. But the people there are just can-do people. And I found that if you had an idea and you spoke up and said, what about this? People would just encourage you, say, yeah, let's do it. And then they'd show you how you could do it and they'd support you in how to doing it. And in a very short time, I don't know, it just became quite going from someone with not much confidence or experience of that sort of thing to feeling pretty empowered about putting stuff on because people had supported me to do it. So I think without those guys, who I'm still part of that club now, I don't think I'd be doing this. I owe a lot to them.
So how did the first Outsider go?
Well, it went. That was the main thing. It was great. The
You
first
managed to
one.
do another one.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the key, isn't it? If you put on a second one, the first one's probably gone all right. It was brilliant. It really was brilliant. Like most people that put on a festival, probably that first one will always be special and unique, and you don't necessarily really know what you're doing. You've just got that wide-eyed enthusiasm and naivety. You think you know what you're doing at the time, but then years later, you realize how much you didn't know and how much you've kind of tweaked it since. But it was so much fun. And at that first one, nothing really went wrong, and we didn't have any trouble, and all the things that you would worry about with a festival. We didn't have terrible weather. It just went fine. And I think what's great about that is because it went so well. I mean, it was very simple. We probably had about 300 people there, but that set the blueprint really that we had such a good time and people loved it and came back that we didn't change the blueprint. So essentially, what we do now is the same as 10 years ago, but obviously we've improved it and we tweak it each year and little expansions, but it's pretty much the same thing. And I think that's a testament to that first one, really.
And how did Cursus come about?
So Cursus came about a couple of years after Outsider, and literally we were talking to someone we knew down in Dorset who was a cider maker because we're very tied in with the actual cider community, as I said, and they said that they had some land and they'd been thinking of putting on a festival.
Is this Meissen Farm?
No, this was actually Canada Farm, which is the old site of Cursus Festival. So Cursus Festival moved last year, so the one you
Mm.
came to, but it's literally 1 mile up the road from the next farm. But they were cider makers as well. They're both cider kind of based farms. And he just wanted to put an event on, and he'd been to Outcider, and he kind of liked what we were about, and he said, well, we'd like to put something on his farm. So we thought, yeah, we've kind of got capacity at the moment to do something else. We'll try it out and make it, like I said, make it family friendly, so it's a bit different, different location. It was quite simple. That's how it came about, and again, people liked it, and they've come back, and it's still here.
So last year, Cursus only had one stage active at any one time. Was that a conscious decision? I liked it. I thought the tighter focus worked really well. Though I question why you didn't just put your last band every day on the main stage. You put them in that the DJ tent, and like I guess it was fun, but it was a bit like your main stage was empty.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, we've only got one live music stage at Cursus. That marquee is the only
Mm.
actual live music stage with all the bands. And then in the changeovers between the bands, it switches to the DJ tent, which, as you know, is right next
Hmm.
door in the bar. So there's always music going on, but there's never any bands clashing. And you can go to the
Yeah.
bar and have a bit of a dance. We put the last band on, so we have our headliner that goes up until midnight.
Hmm.
With everyone in the tent, can take everyone in the festival in that tent. And then at midnight, what we like to do is just have a little bit of late night music. But it's not a headline band, it's a smaller band, like normally a like kind of fun party band that just keeps the vibe going, but just takes it down a notch. It's partly a license thing, so we can go up to midnight in that main marquee with the full sound system going. But going into the bar tent, we can just bring the levels down. It's much smaller in there, so we don't upset any neighbours. Not that there's many neighbours. And also midnight, a lot of people are off to bed, or they got kids or whatever. So if you want to carry on enjoying the music, live music until 1, it's just a smaller kind of more laid back thing. It also gives our sound crew a rest because they're up in the morning, they're running that main stage all day on a very small sound crew. So by the time it gets to midnight, they want to pack a few things away, and we can put the band on in the little stage with very little setup. Our man Dave goes over and just sets them up fairly simply. So that's the reason for it.
Okay, that's really sensible. And to be honest, I quite like it. It does it serves to slow the night down, and make it sort of slowly, naturally come to an end.
Yeah,
So
and one
carry on.
thing that I think is important as well, like some festivals, obviously you can go till 6 in the morning. There's like bars here and bars there, and everyone's crazy. But then the next day, people are just wasted for half the day, or some people miss a whole day. At our events,
Mm,
people are on the cider, and it can be pretty full on. But shutting it down at a reasonable time, and then just having the campfire there means that people can get up the next day and actually get out and enjoy the festival. Because I think there's nothing worse than if you're the band that goes on at midday and you've been really looking forward to playing the festival. Maybe you're like a young upcoming band. Oh, we're playing a festival, and there's no one in the audience because everyone's been up until 6 in the morning. So I think people sort of going to bed a little bit earlier than they might another festival actually helps the vibe of the festival overall because everyone's around all day.
nice. So, is there anything, what do you think that small events like yours can offer that big commercial events can't?
I think that just the main thing for us is that personal connection. That's the key thing. So it was interesting. I listened to your first podcast when you were Silas from Maui Wowie Festival, which was a really good interview. And he was talking about kind of losing touch a little bit with the people, even on the crew or the people that come. Just as it gets bigger, you can't help but
Hmm.
lose touch. He doesn't want to, but it's bigger. You can't see everyone and know everyone. But at our events, they've stayed at the same size. They're very small. And it's meant that we are still really connected with everyone. Most people that come kind of know who they are in some way. And then the new people you get to know pretty quickly. And so people come to our events every year to see people and to meet people, as well as drink cider and watch bands and all the other fun and games we have going on. It really is about connections with people. And we have a lot of quite deep conversations with people, that say that they come because maybe other things in their life aren't going so well, and it's a place they can come and feel safe and be open and like express themselves and meet people. I think you don't really get that at big festivals, you know. A big festival has stuff that we can never offer, you know, the sort of level of headliners, the amount of bands. But I don't think you're ever going to get that personal connection. Certainly, you know, at our events, you could come up to the stage and chat to the sound crew. The bands are hanging around and camping in the same field, you know. The audience, the organisers, and the artists are really on the same level. I think that's what we offer, and that's why people come back because you feel part of the event.
Yeah, no, your events are very special like that. And most festivals don't have, they've got this artificial divide between people who are like performing and people who are just attending. And even between the crew and punters. Like Boomtown, the crew punter attitude is ridiculous. Like, I mean, I kind of love it because you get to walk around with your artist wristband with your feeling of
Mhm.
superiority. But that the like it's crew and artists are friends, and people who buy tickets are friends, and never the two shall meet. Whereas at Cursus, it's completely different, and you'll get chatting to someone who was on the stage just half an hour ago, and you'll make friends. It's really special.
That's really nice to hear that, Tim. Sorry, I just want to say that's really nice. Like when we
Oh,
hear things like that, because that is what we're about, and it's not an accident. You know, these things are important to us. And little kind of funny story. Like quite often we get bands that haven't played before, and they get their artist wristband, and they're like, "Oh, great, I want an artist one." Or their guests say, "Can I have an artist one?" And then they say, "What does the artist one get you?" He says, "Nothing really." It's just so we know that you're allowed round the back to go on the stage. It doesn't give you any privileges, and people like that. You know.
yeah. So, do you have any advice for a group who would be putting on their first festival?
At the moment, in the current situation, as you know, with festivals really struggling and going to the wall, I'd probably have to do
Mm,
my old man parent thing and just say, "Are you sure you want to do it at the moment?" In general, obviously, I just encourage it, like anyone did with us, just say go for it. There's so many things you could advise people, but I think the key thing for me would be surround yourself with people that you trust and that have a good spread of skills. Because where you can kind of do anything. You can troubleshoot anything if you've got the right people around you. There's a million other things you could advise. It's all technical stuff or whatever, but I think that's the key. And recently, I actually met up with some people. Someone asked me if I could come and meet with a group of people who wanted to put on a festival for the first time, a small thing. So I said, yeah, why not? That people have supported us a lot, and they were very young. And there was quite a few things I kind of said, well, maybe you think, have you thought about this? Maybe you want to do this. But actually, what they had was an amazing core of people, even despite their age, with loads of skills and experience, and they were a really tight group. And they didn't end up doing the festival that year. I don't know if they're doing it this year, but I thought they'll probably succeed because the people just seem spot on.
awesome. So, is there anything you think the industry as a whole has got wrong?
Yeah. Um, I think there's lots of things that I don't personally like, maybe about certain festivals, about big festivals, or even some small festivals. You know that if I went, I wouldn't enjoy it or I didn't like. But I don't think I'd say that they've got it wrong. You know, there's different types of events with kind of different motivations. So I'm not really into massive festivals, corporate festivals with sponsorship that make mega money and put on mega acts. It's just not my thing, but it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, they would probably look at my events and say 500 people in a field, you're putting all that effort on to hardly make any money. That's wrong, you know? And there are things definitely that, yeah, that are not my thing, but I'd rather spend my energy really trying to offer what I think is a good thing. So offer the alternative and show what festivals can be about. So if you hear people saying they've had a bad experience at a festival, they've been ripped off or treated badly by security or whatever it is, what we need to be doing is encouraging people to see that there are other events and other kind of ways of operating out there, and encouraging them to come. And maybe people come and it won't be their thing, you know, maybe our thing isn't for them. But I think it is for a lot of people, and a lot of people are maybe missing out on something by going to festivals which haven't really got the spirit of what festivals originally were. But you know, each to their own, isn't it? We've that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
But it's best to put your energy into making your thing a reality and trying to show people what you think is a good thing. That said, it would be, I think, wrong of me not to mention something that does annoy me, which is this kind of open secret about Glastonbury Festival not paying its lower end artists, or in a lot of cases, not even giving them tickets to get in. And I think that that is something that the industry and the media has to have a bit of an honest conversation about. I love Glastonbury. I really admire it and rate it, but it is a bit of a sort of dirty secret. And our friend Grant Sharkey, a performer, has just put on this amazing musical. It's absolutely hilarious, called "Are You Worthy?" where he's about the first person to have that discussion publicly about the kind of ethos of Glastonbury, and I think it should be revisited because I think that festival needs to reclaim a little bit of its soul. That's me never playing Glastonbury.
So are you saying that a lot of the bands who play Glastonbury have to buy their tickets?
It's kind of complicated, but at the bottom end, if you're not on a main stage, you're not a main performer, getting into like these sort of arts areas and stuff like that. Whereas in the past, you might get paid, or you definitely get your ticket, and you didn't expect to get paid, but you got your ticket for the weekend. Now there's a lot of people saying that they are offered gigs, and I know this is a fact because it's happened to my
Mm.
band. We were like, oh yeah, we can get you a gig at Glastonbury. It's like, oh, brilliant. Oh, but we can't give you a ticket. You've got to be in
Mm.
already. And I just think that is mad that the biggest, best arts festival on the planet, possibly, that you've kind of got to get your own way in to perform. And it's not every stage and it's not every act, but it's a real thing. And I know people who have bought a ticket and played, or volunteered so they can do a gig. And I just don't think that that's right, But that's probably opening up a massive can of worms. But it's got to be done.
I've never been, and like it seems like inns in general are pretty impossible to find these days. Like, yeah. How many times have you been, and how did you get in?
So I've been to Glastonbury for a few years now, but I went for many years as a punter. I worked there on the bars, and then I got to play there once with the band in our really early days, which was amazing. And like I say, I love the festival. Like I really, really do love the festival. Um, but in sort of later years, as our bands got bigger, and we kind of were quite well known across the West Country. We played quite a lot of kind of main festivals, and we're a West Country band. We're kind of cabaret. Everyone says, why don't you play at Glastonbury? And the truth is that we've tried, like going through the application route, different stages, competitions, speaking to people we know, but we have found it like impossible to get in. So whatever, it's fine if people don't book us, that's fine. We haven't got a right to be in there or anything. But for the size of that festival, it does seem quite crazy that
Mm.
we can't ever find a way back. And I know other bands feel like that there isn't just a process you can get in there, whereas you can get into other festivals much easier. But I don't know, running that festival must be an incredible job, and there's probably some good reasons why um, bands find it difficult to get in, but it does seem a bit of an enigma in some
Yeah.
ways.
So speaking about bands, who are your favorite bands that you've had perform at your events? Could you give me a top five? You don't have to rank them, just some of your top favorites.
Okay, definitely not ranking them. And obviously, I've got to say every
Mm.
band that's ever played. And sometimes the band that steals the show is one of the smaller bands that no one's ever heard of. That happens quite a
Mm.
lot. The memorable band. Um, but I think some bands deserve a kind of a big mention. I'd say one of the best things we've ever had was the Dreadnots from Canada, and that was quite meaningful. They played an unbelievable gig at Outsider Festival, where us and some of the stewards and security were basically holding down the crash barrier at one point because people were going so crazy for this folk punk band, so crazy. It was amazing. But also, we'd known the Dreadnoughts for years. We had this link with them, and the band kind of finished. And so they'd said, no, we'll never play Outsider because we've kind of finished. And sort of by a series of miracles and nice things, the band got back together and came over and played Outsider, and it was really special. And they've been back since, and they're actually back this summer playing Outsider. So that was really special. The Dub Pistols are
Mm.
amazing. And for a festival our size, we kind of have a limit on the size of the band that we can afford and we can put on. That's just because, our budget is so small. So booking a band like the Dub Pistols, who are like amazing veterans of the festival scene, is such a joy. We've had them a couple of times at different events, and they've been going for years, but they still just bring the party. They love what they do, and everyone loves them because they just take in every kind of music. So they never fail. They're brilliant.
Have you been to Mucky Weekender?
No, do you know what? I haven't. And Barry, your man Barry from Dub Pistols, very kindly offered that I could go down
Hmm.
the year before last after we played at Outsider. And I couldn't go to that weekend, but I'd really love to because again, I feel like that operates on a really nice way because Barry's brilliant with people and he knows a lot of people, and I think it's probably got a really nice big festival family feel about it. Have you been?
No, no, I haven't, though everyone's been telling me to go, and I have seen the Dub Pistols a couple of times, and they are brilliant. I've also got to add about the Dreadnots. They are my favourite band, bar
Oh
none.
yeah.
Absolutely incredible musicians. Yeah, love them. Anyone listening should check them out and come to Outsider to see them. Speaking of which, Kev, are you going to give them a longer set than they had at Cursus last year?
Definitely, yeah. We had a few people asking about that, the Dreadnoughts, because actually they asked to not headline Cursus last year. They're a funny bunch, the Dreadnoughts. We love them. They're our mates. But the Longest Johns were playing and playing on that night, and the Dreadnoughts were playing that night. And the way that programming goes and the band's other, bookings that weekend, they were on the same night. Also, they wanted to be on the same night because the Dreadnoughts and the Longest Johns are friends and sometimes join each other. So we're like, this is magic. Let's put them on.
I mean, yeah, perfect pirate night.
Exactly. But the Longest Johns, I think probably the band didn't mind, but I think the agent probably saw it. The bookers saw them as the headline band. And the
Mm.
Dreadnoughts were very happy to not be the headline band. They said, no, let the Longest Johns headline. We'll go on before. But going on before means doing a slightly shorter set than you would if you were the headliner. So they got a bit of a lesser set.
Could you have sort of snuck a dual headliner set in? Is that something that is possible, or?
Yeah, I guess so. And I like listening to feedback. And if enough people had said to me, oh, feel a bit shortchanged by that, then that is something you'd look at in the future because we can do that. Nothing is fixed. I think the Dreadnoughts were they were happy because they normally come and play a really long set.
I mean, they'd been on a mad cider holiday. I can't blame them for only playing an hour. But at the same time, like they're this big American band who come to the UK like once every year at most. Like people were buying Curses tickets just to see the Dreadnoughts. And it was slightly disappointing that the set
Oh,
was
that's fair
shorter than
enough.
expected.
Absolutely. And it was an unusual thing for us because normally they would be the headliner. It was just the way that it came about. So that is something I would take on board. Um, they are playing at Outsider this year. They're playing the Thursday night at Outsider. Again, due to it's unusual. We didn't even used to
Mm.
have a Thursday night, but due to their scheduling, they can come and headline and they will have a nice long set on Thursday night because they'll be the main band and there'll be plenty of
Mm.
time to do that. So hopefully, Tim, if you come to Outsider, um, I'll buy you a pint. We can watch them together, and it will make up for that bit of lost time.
Oh, that would be beautiful, Kev. Thank you so much. And I mean, you say lost time, but that gig was still one of the best experiences of my life, and I still have to thank you so
Well,
much
that
for letting me come
just
along
makes
to
it
it.
all worthwhile, to be honest, mate. Really, when you hear people saying things like that, it makes all the effort and the risk and the hassle worthwhile to give people those experiences. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So now on to the Skimmity Hitchers. I have to ask, where does the name come from, and what does Skimmity mean? I have no idea.
So it is a real thing. The Skimmity ride, or Skimmington, as it's called in other parts of the southwest, is a thing that used to happen in kind of rural areas back in the 18th, 19th century, which is when someone kind of transgressed the social rules in a village or a town, then they would be kind of ridiculed and parodied by the village. So it was a way of shaming people. It wasn't necessarily always a good thing. But if you transgressed the rules, then they would make up an effigy of you and or dress someone up as you and parade them sometimes backwards on the back of a donkey through the village to kind of draw attention to your misdemeanors. And that was called the Skimmity Ride. And when I first learnt about this, and there's a chapter in one of Thomas Hardy's novels, The Mayor of Casterbridge, which is dedicated to a Skimmity Ride. They talk about drunkenness, parody, and rough music. That's the description that's given to it, more or less.
Well, that sounds a lot like your band.
And I read that description of the Skimmity and went, that's us, because we go up on stage, we play rough music, people get drunk, and we all humiliate each other, ourselves and people in the audience. And it's basically what we do. So we felt like we were hitching on the Skimmity ride. So we became the Skimmity Hitchers.
So, what genre would you call the Skimmity Hitchers? Like, I call you Wurzel's or Cider Punk. Do you think that's accurate?
I don't. I love Wurzel's core. I would take that in an instant. That's brilliant. Cider punk is a thing. I guess we're on the fringe of cider punk, but because we can be quite folky and
Mm.
cabaret and stuff as well, we're not quite cider punk in the way that
Yeah.
Surfing Turnips maybe are. But Scrumpy and Western is the actual genre, and that was coined by the Wurzels on their Scrumpy and Western EP back
Scrumpy
in
and Western.
when was it? Late 60s. Scrumpy and Western. So there is now a tradition of Scrumpy and Western, like going back to the 60s from the Wurzels, with bands that do parodies, as well as original music as well. We did plenty of original songs, but parodying West Country themed, lots of cider in it, is Scrumpy and Western music. And if you look it up on the old internet, you'll see like there's a Wikipedia page dedicated to it, and you could see all the other bands like Shag Connors and the Carrot Crunchers. There's loads of bands out there doing Scrumpy and Western.
So, one thing I found that's interesting is like you've got Scrumpy and Western arising in other places. Like, it's not quite Scrumpy and Western, but the Lancashire Hot Pods do something quite similar to you guys and the Wurzels. They take what's it called, like popular songs and then localize them, change the lyrics to make them funny for the local region. Do you think that's have you run into it much elsewhere?
Definitely, yeah. And at one point years ago, I had this idea that I wanted to do a festival where I brought all those regional acts together. Because I was sort of discovering all these bands all across the place, and the Lancashire Hot Pots, finally we got to support them as well. They did a tour and they came to Bristol, the Thekla, and we contacted them. Well, maybe they contacted us actually and said we support, and it was brilliant, to have two regional parody bands. And essentially, you are doing the same thing, and you are celebrating your regional culture, and it was great. So yeah, it is a real thing. I don't know why that happens, why it keeps repeating itself, but I like the fact that it does, because it's a really nice way of, kind of celebrating your regional culture. Also, you can have fun at the expense of others, but just in a tongue-in-cheek way. It's not got that horrible edge that like nationalism has, that sort of horrible tribalism. It's tongue-in-cheek, it's fun, but also you get to feel good about where you're from and your regional drink and your funny way of saying or doing something, because it is important.
Being from the southeast, I'm kind of jealous of like the West Country and the North, some like regional identities, because in the East we're just completely swamped by London. Everything is London. Like you've got a bit of like country goings on, but it isn't like Bristol is like the capital of the West Country. The East Anglia, Norwich, it's not quite the same level of cultural strength as such. And I'm a bit jealous. Maybe I'm just being poo-pooing my own home, but yeah.
It's a good point though. And funny enough, I actually wrote a song about this. It's on our most recent album called Roots Man. And it's exactly about that. And it's the chorus goes, "You got roots, man. Sing it loud and proud like Toots, man. Whether you're from London town or Luton," which is terrible rhyming, but the point is, and the point of the song talks about wherever you're from, there's something interesting about it and there's something worth celebrating. Because we've had people say that a lot over the years. People say, "Oh, I'm from such and such a place," and yeah, there's nothing to sing about. But I kind of feel like if you dig deep and you've had experiences there. There's something about your local area which is unique and interesting and fun. It's just sort of about digging it out really and celebrating it. But I also do take your point. It must be difficult.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose when I go more hyper local, so like when I talk about my hometown or Cambridge or like I grew up in the town where Brian Eno's from, near Sutton Hoo, so we've got a bit of like local culture. It's just when you get wider, you've got Norfolk and you've got Essex, and Suffolk's sort of like just London overflow now, and it's a bit sad. I mean, you write about that quite a lot, how you don't want the West Country to turn into that.
That's very true. Yeah, that is very true. And so yeah, I need to actually agree with some of what you're saying. I'm really lucky to have grown up in the West Country, and there is a lot of kind of space and still a lot of heritage sort of still existing in people. You go into kind of farmland and you do meet people that are, still West Country people, that speak kind of bits of dialect and have those memories and there's that connection that I don't know, maybe in other parts of the country it's just been swallowed up.
Yeah, when you find a
So I am lucky. I don't
when
want.
you find a proper Suffolk boy, just like you go into a rural pub and it's maybe 1 in 5 of the people that have an actual Suffolk accent. The rest just talk like me. Yeah, it's a bit, it's okay because it means we've got like London is cool and I do like London influence, but no, I'd like to have a regional identity a bit more. Anyway, on to a new topic. I noticed that basically none of your music is on Spotify. Is there a reason for this?
Yeah, originally it just started, we're a DIY band. We're a working band, but we other jobs, we're pretty busy people. And so we're just a bit behind the curve, we're running our own stuff and getting on Spotify just wasn't a thing, a priority. And also we were still selling a lot of CDs. I think we were still selling CDs well beyond when other acts were. It's maybe because we got a bit of a more of an old school audience. So it wasn't really a priority for us. But then also when it became more of a conversation, there was a real thing about, well, what's it, kind of we put our music up there and not get anything back. So this thing about artists, again, not being paid was a thing we discussed as a band. And there is obviously that thing about exposure and reaching more people. But like, how many people are we going to reach?
Mm.
How many people that don't already know about Scrumpy and Western really want to know about it, just to give it away to Spotify. So we didn't do it. And instead we put all our stuff online digitally on our website. And if people want to buy a digital version of it and then put it into their phone or their laptop, whatever they can. And we just felt that, that direct connection with people. Because people do ask us, oh, why aren't you on Spotify? And we say, well, if you want, you can buy the tracks fairly cheap and download them. If people don't want to spend a fiver on an album, then I guess they don't really want it that badly, do they?
I mean, the
But
reason,
we're always having the conversation. It may well be that we go onto Spotify. It's not like that we're sort of mad, crazy political punks or anything. But there was originally a reason behind that.
well, like the reason I bring it up is I'm trying to make like the way I listen to music is mostly through Spotify, and I know that's not great, but it's so
Mhm.
convenient to have, I've got like a 2 day long festival music playlist, which I just add every band I see at a festival that I like to. And it's like, oh, I can just shuffle that and have, one of 20,000 songs or whatever that I like come up. Yeah, it's just so convenient. And I know that's like convenience is killing the music industry, but it's so convenient.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, Spotify's brilliant, and it suits a lot of people. And again, I'm not saying people shouldn't use it or anything. It's just our personal thing that it didn't really seem to have as many benefits for us as it had for Spotify for us. But for other acts, it works, and like getting out to loads of people who might discover it, who might then go and buy it is a great thing. There's definitely arguments for it.
Mm.
I enjoy the discussion about Spotify a lot, so I'm not against it in that sense.
And it's not like you don't give your music
That's
away for
right. If
free
people
anyway.
really
Most of
want
it's on
to,
YouTube.
they could go and rip it if they wanted to, and sometimes
Mm.
people get in touch about a track. We just send them a track. We got some old tracks from the early incarnation of the band that aren't even on there, and I'll just send those tracks sometimes free to people. We're not precious about it, and we're not. It's not like we're trying to make money out of everything. It's not like that. It's just you
Mm.
just draw your own line about what's worthwhile and what you want to do. Yeah.
So, what's your favourite festival you've performed at that isn't one of the Fueled by Cider ones?
Personally, I love Boomtown.
Mm,
It's sort of within the band, sometimes it can be a bit of a stressful experience getting there, getting in, lugging your gear across. But I love the festival, and we've played a few times there, and I feel really privileged that we get asked to, on that lineup they have, just the best lineups
yep.
and the creativity that goes in. To think that we will be asked to play that we're worthy of, being on such a creative, good lineup is amazing for me. So I love Boomtown.
I sadly only managed to catch 5 minutes of your set last year because my mates were moving me on. But you know how Boomtown is.
It's totally that's the fact you even saw 5 minutes. I feel very honoured, to be honest, with everything else going on. Thanks for coming along.
Do you have any chaotic stories from Boomtown?
I think as a performer, it's just kind of chaotic anyway. There's been years we've played where it's been wet and trying to get in and like queues. And the main thing is trying to get your gear across the site because trying to communicate and get the pickups that don't arrive or you're in the wrong place. It's an amazing festival and I really love it and the way it runs. But yeah, it's not a rock and roll chaos that I'm talking about that we went off and did this and that. It's kind of chaotic getting about and being at the stage and
Mm.
that kind of chaos.
Yeah, honestly,
Plenty of rock and roll chaos, obviously, as well.
I think there might be a business in offering back, going to artist camping and offering bands, hey, I'll carry your stuff.
That's a really good point. We waited up because we play kind of late in our area, and there is artist transport, but it's driving all round, and there's bands playing all the time on about 50 stages. So trying to be in the right place and communicate and get that pickup, and we were waiting round. I think it was gone midnight, and
I performed three sets. I was doing a walkabout show. Managed to catch artist transport 1 out of the 6 times I
that's
needed it.
exactly it. And we walked our stuff back to the where we were camping. It was a fair old walk, and we were carrying a lot of band gear, a lot double bass, and
Mm.
we had a guitar amp.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it was really, and it was on one hand, it was really annoying. It's like, come on, there should be someone doing this. But on the other hand, you just sort of had to laugh. You see what's going on around you at Boomtown. You think, yeah, it's a mad place. It's never going to run
Mm.
exactly how you want it to.
So, what does your dream festival lineup look like? If someone gave you like an unlimited budget and said you'd get the whole thing off and just said pick a lineup and go
Wow,
for it.
it's a really good question. To know. That's a mind-blowing idea. In a way, in a
Oh,
way, I'd kind of want to do what we're doing now because I actually really love and believe in what we're doing now, the smaller thing, but maybe
mm,
be able to have a dream headliner at your little event. So I'm not really that interested in having a festival where like every great band that I've ever loved is there. In a way, I'd rather have
mm,
something really special, like when we got the Dreadnots, on a smaller end to make the
mm.
festival special. But so for example, run the festivals we do, have all our upcoming acts and our grassroots bands and that whole scene, which is so important. And then Idols finish the night off.
Mm. That's a big choice.
I think that's my kind of thing. That's just something mega that I really love, that a band that I admire, I love their music, but they just finish off what is already kind of my dream festival is it's just running a grassroots festival.
What day would you put them on? Sunday or?
I'd just give them half an hour, Tim, just to disappoint everyone. No, yeah, I think I guess Saturday night is what everyone expects, but then why not? You could put them on the Sunday night, couldn't you, to keep everyone there and just build it up all weekend
I mean, yeah,
for Idols to play.
I do like the idea of putting your biggest headliner on your Sunday and having them close it out because close with a bang.
Definitely. And there is a thing at festivals where people, you lose people on the Sunday. Some people go home because they've got work the next day or childcare, whatever it
Mm.
is. They might stay for most of Sunday, but
Mm.
they've packed up. And sometimes at festivals, Sunday isn't, the reason why Saturday is great is because everyone's going to be there. But I
Yeah.
think if you put your absolute headline, especially something mega like that on the Sunday night, I don't think many people would be leaving Sunday, would
No.
they? They'd all make arrangements for the Monday. So maybe that is the way.
I mean, I'm always a leave on Tuesday person, so
There you go. You don't miss a thing. And what I really like that the review that you wrote for the festivals.com last year for
mm.
Cursus, in which we didn't know you before that. It was a really nice review. It was lovely to read. I think you reviewed every band
I consciously reviewed every band. Yeah.
And I was looking back over it the other day, Tim, and I was thinking, that's amazing. You know, that you've reviewed every single band. You've given everyone some coverage, and you've been interested enough in the festival that you actually want to watch every band. So that's exactly the sort of people that we love having our events, you know, real music lovers, people that get it and want to see the
Oh,
bands, you know. And the bands appreciate that too, because they always get an audience.
you've got an advantage in that because you are only doing the one stage, and it means that I can stay focused and give everyone a chance. Like at Maui Wowie, right? It's only what, 10 times the size of, a bit less than 10 times the size of Cursus, and yet they've got 12 stages. So you're running about like a headless chicken, and like yeah, you'll discover something amazing, but you'll also miss three brilliant bands that you never knew about. Like, I like the way you guys focus on making your one stage just so perfect. So at the same time, I think you could maybe do with a bit of an open mic stage as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and that's something we've added in the last year to Outsider. So Outsider is a bit different from Cursus. We have two stages at Outsider, but we alternate. So instead of
Hmm.
having the DJs in between the changeovers, you move to the second stage. So you're going to have to work cut out to review every band at that festival because there's a 5 minute break in between the bands. But even
Oh,
then,
is it
you
a five
can
minute walk?
watch. No, it's about 30-second walk, so there is time to get a pint or a pasty. But
Oh,
again,
yes.
that's really important to us that you don't have to miss a band if you don't want to. You can see a bit of every band, you know.
Mm.
And when you said earlier about the difference between our events and big festivals, one thing I've noticed at big festivals, and I remember this when I used to go to big festivals to buy a ticket, you spend a lot of your time trying to get your money's worth out of your expensive ticket. So you're chasing your tail, you're running around, you're looking at your program, there's clashes. So you don't get a good experience out of the two bands because you're rushing to see a bit of both of them. But at
Mm,
our
mm.
events, you can, all right, we don't have as many acts, but you can really immerse yourself in it and not miss it and enjoy it. And that means you can also relax while you're there because you're not just running around trying to get your money's worth, you know. You can walk around and get your money's worth.
I would have thought that while this has lots of advantages, it also means you have to be a lot more picky with who you have perform. Because I reckon, what, you probably have a lot more bands trying to play at Curses than play, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And so my kind of spreadsheet, I got my list of bands that want to play and that I want to play. It's quite long, you know, and over time, you know, hopefully those acts will all get to play. But yeah, it does limit what you can put on. But also we're limited by our budget because our ticket numbers don't increase. So, you know, our budget stays really low. It means that you're
I
already
mean, yeah, well,
wiping out a
it's
huge amount of
500.
bands that you can never have. So
It it's 500
it,
tickets, right? Yeah, and £100 a ticket. That doesn't give you that much budget to play
No,
with.
it really doesn't. And a lot of my time is spent kind of juggling that. And I do want to point
Mm.
out as well that we do pay every act that plays at all of our events.
Do
Now,
you? Wow, that's incredible.
we do. At the lower end, obviously, you're covering people's expenses, maybe barely, depending on where they come from.
Mm.
We don't not pay people because we just don't agree with that, you know. So yeah, that does mean that our kind of margins are tiny. They really are, but that's what we believe in, and you know, it's important to us. But it does mean that you'll never see idols outside, much as I'd love it.
I mean, well, one day maybe you'll make friends and get a lucky chance. Or maybe they'll have a
Well,
scandal and be very cheap.
that's a great way of looking at it. You could build a festival around scandalized acts who are on the way down.
I mean, I think you might sell tickets, but I think your audience might be
Yeah,
horrible.
I think that would be like the anti-fueled by cider event. You go for it, Tim, if
Yeah.
you want to give it a go.
No, thank you, mate. No, thank you. So now you've answered all my questions and made it through to the end. Do you have anyone else you want to shout out or any projects you want to promote? You're talking about that musical. What's that
Yeah, so
about?
that's not our thing. It's just Grant Sharkey, a friend of ours who's performed at our events, has put that on, and we went to watch it. A couple of us went to watch it last weekend, and it was brilliant. There's only a couple of nights left, I think, but look it up. Look him up, Grant Sharkey. Check that out.
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
want to say, I want to shout out our mate Gav because I forgot to mention him earlier in the core festival crew. And Gav, every festival needs a Gav. Gav can do everything. He's such a hard worker and he's such a top guy. Some of you listeners will know him from he plays in Blackwater County. He
Mm.
drives the van. He helps do the build. He can fix anything. He plays in bands. He just basically does everything. And I didn't want him to get left out of a
He's your
mention.
man.
He is our
He's
man. And have to shout out basically all of our crew, our volunteer crew that come and steward and do the build and the breakdown, because without them, it's not possible, and we put a lot of trust in them and they work hard, and they are the key to a successful event because we can rely on them, and they're brilliant, and every festival relies on its crew.
Are there
Um,
still
and
places in the crew for Cursus
there's
this year?
literally few. There's a handful of people that can do the break at the end and a couple of shifts. So if someone wants to come to one of our festivals but just can't afford the ticket, totally understandable. Get in touch with us because we're always looking for people to come and join the crew. And we do it very much on a friends of friends and word of mouth. That's how we work. To
Okay.
do that. And I finally, unless you got anything else you want to ask, it is really important to say thanks to people that actually buy a ticket and come to the events, because especially at the moment where events are struggling and going to the wall, we really appreciate people choosing our events to come, because we're not immune to what's going on. We're weathering the storm, we're doing okay, and I think we're going to get through it and we're going to succeed, but mainly because this amazing community of people we got that come. And people often, people come and chat to me at the festivals. I love chatting to everyone at the festivals. And people come say, thanks for putting it on. Thanks for making this amazing experience. And I quite often say, thanks for coming, because if you didn't come, this festival would be rubbish. And I really mean it. You can put on the best festival in the world, but if people don't buy a ticket and turn up, the festival doesn't exist, and it's the people that make the festival, the people that bring the atmosphere. You can't create that or buy that. People make it. So, yeah, all
Yeah,
power to the Fueled by Cider people.
without ticket buyers, a festival is just a really expensive private
That's
party.
right. That's right. That's perfectly summarized, mate.
Yeah. It's been so nice talking to you, Kev. Thanks so much for coming onto the show, and thanks for revealing the secrets behind Cursus, Outsider, and Incider.
Great. And thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing, Tim, because your reviews and your promotion and your podcast, it's all putting the word out there. And it's really important.
Man, 44 festivals have closed down this year. I can't do nothing anymore.
Yeah, absolutely fair point. That's really good.
Uh,
And we'll see you at ours, won't
yeah,
we?
of
This
course.
this summer.
I am locked in for Outsider, and I am very excited.
I think you're gonna love it. I really do.
All right. I will chat to you maybe at Outsider, maybe before then. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Kev. And I hope to have you back on the show someday. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon.